A holding cell is not a place suitable for joyful living. This place is all about confinement and isolation. Remember the Beatles sung a song, All the Lonely People? They said, I look at all the lonely people. All the lonely people. Where do they belong? Some of them belong in there. Well, one of the writers said, I've never known anyone who has been isolated, lonely, and unconnected, had no deep relationships, yet had a meaningful and joy-filled life. You see, the problem is that's the way many cops have chosen to live, in isolation. We live and work around people, but some never experience life deeply with anybody, and the social term is this, a crowded loneliness. Now that's not what the good Lord intended. God's very creative, literally. He created from light to livestock, and He calls everything good. Then He makes man, and He says, now that's very good. Now think about this. Adam is perfect in condition, perfect state, perfect relationship with God, and then God turns around in verse 18 and says, it's not good. It's not good that man should be alone. How can that be? Because Adam didn't have a human counterpart. Genesis 2:18, it's not good for the man to be alone. You may say, he wasn't alone. He had the triune Godhead. He had all the animals, but Adam didn't have Eve. You see, even God cannot fill the void of human relationships in our life. So what's the difference between a church and a bar? Both are places of social interaction. Both have some good people and some pretenders. A friend of mine said this, some Christian people aren't as good as some non-Christians think they are, and some non-Christians aren't as bad as some Christians think they are. You see, the difference comes when we investigate their origins. The church was instituted by Christ, and the bar wasn't. Church. The Bible says, forsake not the assembling together as the manner of some is, but so much the more as you see the day approaching. The world. They took that verse, and they created the party life and the atmosphere. Remember Toby Keith's song, I Love This Bar? I love this bar. It's my kind of place. Just walking through the front door puts a big smile on my face. It ain't too far. Come as you are. I love this bar. You see, both institutions utilize humans' need for other humans. But aloneness is not good. It's true, there's a God-sized void inside of us that only God can fill. It's also true, there's a human-sized void inside of us that only humans can fill. You can't fill it with money. You can't fill it with achievement, business, books, not even God. And the sometimes misunderstood role of the law enforcement chaplain is partly to become a trusted confidential resource for the officer who sometimes finds themselves in need of direction, options, and wisdom. And here's why. Because isolationists, if we choose to figuratively speaking live inside the holding cell, they experience several relational maladies. They lose perspective. There's no objective voice calling us toward balance. The chaplain and peer support, we need to be that voice for people because lows tend to be lower, highs tend to be higher, and the point of view gets clouded and things seem better or worse than they really are. Simple decisions can seem larger than life, and decision making can become impulsive when no one is there to point them to true north. It's easy to lose perspective that we're in a spiritual battle with an enemy, the devil, that wants to kill us, literally, and we can lose our life. Remember this concept. Sheep are never attacked in the flock. They're always attacked when isolated away from the flock. All right? Here's one of the things. Fear of intimacy. It's natural to be afraid of intimacy. If you've never had a close relationship, one line of thinking is this. If people get to know the real me, they won't like me. They would rather stay isolated than risk rejection. Another is this. If I let them too close, they're going to expect professional favors. Well, understand something about marriage preparation. Stats for successful law enforcement marriage are dismal. One of the classes I was graciously allowed to audit at Alita gave the stat of 75% of male officers and 95% of female officers would divorce at least one time. More than one reason, but a lack of intimacy and transparency is a great suspect. And if a person can be in a small group and learn to be transparent and honest before marriage, there's less reason to fear intimacy after marriage. And intimacy is simply transparency, letting people see on the inside. Another malady is selfishness. Isolation breeds selfishness. If the sum total of a person's life is defined by schedule, agenda, needs, desires, chances are they suffer from selfishness. And selfishness, the problem is, that leads to self-absorbedness and self-centeredness. Life is seen through a very narrow lens. And listen, the Bible has nothing good to say about us putting ourselves on the throne of our heart, a place reserved for the good Lord Himself. And the last malady is this, poor health. Ortberg writes in his book, Everybody is Normal Till You Get to Know Them. Here's what he said. Researchers found that the most isolated people were 3 times more likely to die than those with strong relational connections. People who had bad health habits, such as smoking, poor eating habits, obesity, or alcohol use, but strong social ties lived significantly longer than people who had great health habits but were isolated. In other words, it's better to eat Twinkies with good friends than to eat broccoli all by yourself. Dr. Henry Cloud, clinical psychologist, he said, a person's ability to love and connect with others lays the foundation for both psychological and physical health. This research illustrates that when we're in a loving relationship, a bonded relationship, we are growing. And when we're isolated, we're slowly dying. Listen, living a life alone does not accurately reflect the one whose image we bear. God is a relational being, and He created His prized creations, you and me, for the need for significant relationship in our life. And God said about living life alone, it's not good. Be careful about ignoring other officers who are your peers or not taking the opportunity to build a relationship with your chaplain. Certainly it's difficult developing relationships outside the ranks, but it's not impossible. But it's downright dangerous to live a life of isolation. Because in here by yourself, protected from the world as you may be, it's really not a joyful place to live. Think about it. Thanks for watching COPchurch.